Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today I have two guests on the podcast, Manuel and Nick Wood. And I met both of these individuals. Well, actually, I met Dai about 10 years ago through a mutual friend and just, had kept in touch over the years. He used to run these events called Sunday Fun Days where you just show up, do a workout, CrossFit style with a group of people, amazing community. Dai's got an infectious energy to him. He's somebody that I believe everybody feels an instant connection to. And quite honestly, a lot of people look at him as being almost superhuman. Like Dai's in incredible shape. He talks about the fact that he dates his wife still. And I know that was something that always landed for me whenever I heard Dai introduce himself and who he is and how he shows up. And then, of course, Nick was somebody that I just recently met through Dai because Dai had told me about these mentorship Mondays that they host. So they refer to it as the MENtorship World now, and I'll link it all up for anybody that wants to go and check this out. But to summarize it, basically the two of them had been friends for only about the last 3 or 4 years. They connected in Bali, and they started this group where they would just bring together a group of men to come and just share openly, vulnerably, honestly, share their truth in an open space, a safe space, a place with no judgment, no coaching, no mentorship, no, feeling that you're right or wrong or anything like that, just a place to talk. And I know for myself at the start of this year, I committed to being the greatest version of myself. And this podcast is, of course, a piece of that. It's me showing up, sharing the conversations that I'm having with incredible people that I believe could inspire you and myself to live that greatest life, to be that greatest version. And when I started down this journey, one of the things that I realized, it hit me really hard at about month 3 at the start of this year, is that I need community. I need people to surround myself with that are just willing to listen, that can empathize, that can relate, that can hold me up when I'm feeling down, that can high-five me when I'm having good days and good weeks and good months. And I found that in this community. And there's really no other way to describe it other than that, is that it is a community. It's a community of just men showing up, sharing their vulnerable, honest truth. And Dai and Nick have created this space. So what we talked about here today was ultimately like what drove them to create this space? What drives them in their everyday to be that conduit for these men that are there looking for support, not even knowing exactly what that means or what shape it's going to take, but that it's perfect. And if that resonates for you at all, I think you're really going to enjoy meeting both of these individuals. And then, of course, if you want to find out anything more about the mentorship world and the Monday calls, currently as of the time of this recording, all of these calls that happen are on Mondays. That could change in the future, but I highly encourage you to check it out. It was exactly what I needed when I wasn't sure exactly what I needed, if that makes sense. But these two guys are obviously a big reason for that, and that's why I wanted to introduce them to you. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. It's Dai Manuel and Nick Wood. Gentlemen, pleasure to have you on my podcast today.
Pleasure to be here.
Amazing.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. We had everything in the universe that was trying to conspire about not making this happen. Just literally like power outages. I just got into my office, all that kind of stuff. But we're making it work. It all, everything aligned, right? So
meant to be.
It's meant to be. Exactly. Yeah. So to give both of you a little context, because obviously we talked a little bit before we hopped on here, but the real reason why I created this podcast was to be able to serve other people, to really look at the journey of their own life and the mess that it actually is, the messiness of it, and be grateful for it and see the gifts in it and, leverage it to either become their message in some cases, and in other cases, just to ultimately own and just love the journey, right? And there's a quote actually that Brene Brown said that is, one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it will be somebody else's survival guide. So I just want to ground us in that when we start here. And I would have done an introduction leading us to here, but just for everybody that's watching. So Dai and I met, it's got to be about 5 years ago, I think now, for the very first time. I still remember it was like a breakfast that we had with Jen Schaefer's at the time, Jen Murtaugh.
I think it's got to be a little more than 5 because I was traveling. I was already traveling. I wouldn't have been here. So yeah, it's a while. I think I was still at Fitness Town, to be honest, Trevor's, and I hadn't exited out of that yet. So yeah, man, it's a while ago though, huh?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It was more like 2010, so it would have been like 10 years ago. Yeah, that's right. Man, it's crazy how quickly time flies by. But
That'd be 11, but just
11 years. Yeah,
I don't think you had kids yet, Trevor. Just to put it in perspective, right?
Definitely didn't have.
You think
kids
about how
yet.
much life can change so quickly, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Man.
And then Nick, of course, I got introduced to you just because of, the evolving relationship that Dai and I have had, because over the years, I lived in North Burnaby for a while. So I attended a few Sunday fun days. Dai used to host these just get-togethers on a Sunday where you just come and work out, and great community, that type of thing. And Nick, of course, I first met you when I jumped on these Monday calls, which were the Mentorship Monday. And of course, the name is evolving as well, like MENtorship World. But I guess why I was excited to talk to both of you is that, I already kind of introduced the context of the podcast, but one of the things that really hit me just in the last couple of weeks is just how healing talking about things can be. And that sounds so simple, but at the same time, I think anybody that's experienced being in a safe place to be able to just express their truth without judgment, without feedback, without coaching or anything like that, they get it. And those that don't, they should experience this. So that's why I wanted to talk to both of you, because I believe you've created an amazing space for men in particular. And I want people to just meet you guys, and I want them to be able to experience this and understand exactly what it is. So anyways, with that, I thank you both for being here, because this is important work. And, for the context of us trying to make sure we're not talking over each other, maybe I'll start with you, Dai. I see you in the middle of my screen here, but do you want to maybe just tell everybody about who you are, what's brought you to this place, why the vision and the inspiration for Mentorship Mondays actually came to be from your words?
So, well, thanks, Trevor, for the question. And, I don't know. I'd like to be able to give you a short answer, and so I'll do my best. I'm 44 years young and father of 2 teenage girls. They're 16 and 18 now. I've been dating my wife, Christy. We're in our 22nd year together. As you can imagine, there's lots of other stuff that's happened in between those milestones. But, being a father, being a very dedicated husband and partner, those are actually the titles that mean the most to me. Those are the pieces that really resonate with me. And it's the thing that's going to run concurrently throughout my entire life. It's like really where a lot of the value is. And it wasn't always that way. And we'll probably explore that later. But, there was parts of my life where I was really ego-driven, very focused on career. And as such, those other things that I always said were important to me weren't a priority any longer. I wasn't living in integrity, and that created a lot of other complications and mental health challenges and physical challenges and just, life, as you said earlier, the mess, right? The mess that is our life. And, as I was maturing and aging and going through my own changes and doing a lot of my own inner work and working with some professionals, some great coaches, a psychologist, counselors, just really diving deep over the last, I'd say 12 years and just working on me. And during that process, I realized I didn't have a lot of close male friends I could be open, honest with, really just be completely transparent, share what's on my mind, and not fear that I'm going to get judged or what I might share could potentially be used against me later. There's always those trust factors, right? And that I felt this big hole. And then I met Nick when I was living in Bali with my family, and we just bumped into each other at a co-working space. And, I saw him working away on his laptop. He saw me sort of waiting to go into an event. And I don't know how we got onto it, but we got to talking and found out, he's from Ontario. I'm from Ontario. And it was like, here we are sitting in Bali, 2 guys from Ontario, both in their 40s, or Nick was not quite 40 yet. And because I had the opportunity, actually, the first time I did any men's stuff was with Nick at his birthday party. And I'll let him talk about that. But long and short of it was, it was like, I had this idea. I was like, well, why don't we? Because I was living in Canggu. I was struggling with getting up to Ubud to hang with Nick and to attend his men's groups. So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do this thing on Monday nights. Invite some guys to get together for dinner and conversation. Nick, do you think this is a good idea? Are you in? Would you want to come? And he's like, do I want to come? I'll be there. And Nick was there every freaking Monday. And then we just sort of co-facilitated, co-created this beautiful space, which is now coming on 3 years. So that's it. Sorry, a little bit more long-winded than I intended, but I felt it was important to have a little bit of context there to go off of later.
No, it's perfect. Nick, you want to maybe pick up from there? I didn't realize you guys met in Bali. For some reason, I thought you connected in Vancouver at first, but that's not true at all. So here we go, learning new things. So yeah, for you, Nick, maybe if you want to just give the Coles Notes version of your background to get to the point where you guys meet in Bali and then start creating this event, and here we are today.
First of all, I love that 3 Canadians can say Coles Notes rather than Sparks Notes or
I know,
whatever.
right?
Like all the different versions of
Is that a Canadian thing? I didn't even realize
Totally
it.
is. Yeah. So, yeah, just to give a little bit of context, I got into men's work early because I was going through a whole bunch of family stuff in my teens where my biological father was sort of pushed out of my life. And I went through a really rough period with my mom and my now ex-stepdad. When I regained contact with my biological father, he was in a men's group. And I didn't realize how much I had stored in my system. And there was this moment where after the first 2 weeks of just joy of being out of that other situation, he told me to like do my homework or something. And no one had ever done that. And it led into a fight in the kitchen. And we were like two bucks just at this angle, shoving each other. And partway through, I realized he wasn't trying to hurt me. He was holding it. He wasn't letting me hurt him or just have my way with anything. But he wasn't trying to hurt me. And when I realized that, I broke down crying on his arms. And it was really a powerful moment for me. And I attributed a lot of it to the men's group that he was in. And so at that age, as a teenager, I started reading all of these books that his men's group had. And I thought that was a key difference between my ex-stepdad, who was a really neat guy in a lot of ways, really intelligent, good-looking, talented, good at business, but had all of this hurt underneath. And then my dad, who is a human, flaws and all, but was able to meet me in this really loving space. And so I always thought that it was hugely important to cultivate those kinds of relationships. So when I met Dai, I thought, okay, here's someone I want to be around. At the risk of sounding egotistical, there aren't that many people that I immediately think I can learn something from them, right? I think I can learn something from anybody in a broader sense, but people who are like, yeah, this person will make me better. I felt that immediately with Dai. I had him on my podcast, and I went in having a terrible day and left and created a magical day afterwards, right? So I thought, this is someone I want to have around. So I started inviting him to my men's group that I was doing in Ubud, and with 2 kids, and it's a different town. And for people who don't know Bali, and we're just throwing these names around, it's like a 45-minute commute through windy rice fields on a good day, but with traffic, it just gets crazy. So it was too much. But for me, as a single person with no kids, it was a lot easier when he said he was starting one. So I was stoked. And then, yeah, we were there. The first ever Mentorship Monday, I shared first. Dai was so generous with his introduction of me. Like, he really singled me out. And he was like, and this is Nick. We're really lucky to have him down. He does this men's work. And for the first while, it was like, really, he treated me like a celebrity, which was sweet. And I thought, okay, well, I'll share first. I'll get us going. And then it led to me being coached by the other 9 people in the room. So the entire session was I shared. I was going through a messy breakup, and then 9 people coached me. And the first little bit was that. And we had some guest people who came in and did men's work, and they sort of took over. And there's one where this person, lovely guy, but it just wasn't the vibe. And he was facilitating. This is really early. He kind of sat on the back of the bench, and he was above everybody. He's the same height as me, so he's like 6'6". And people were like, "What are you doing lording over us?" And it was a moment. And so I remember Dai and I got on a call and was like, "Okay, for real though, what do we want this to be?" And we had a discussion. I said, "Great, I'll put together a framework, and we'll see like what you think." And then I showed up, and I was like, "Hey, and Nick, take it away." I didn't expect that. I thought Dai was going to like use the format that we made, and so it ended up being this really fun, dynamic partnership where Dai brings this magical exuberance for life, and then my nerdiness will come in and hold a certain framework, and I think I'm giving myself a little bit of a hard time, but because I'm pretty connected to my emotions, it also invites other men to do that, right? I sometimes joke that I'm a Trojan horse because I'm this giant dude, right? I've got a beard right now, and so no one ever questions my manliness, but I'm really emotional. And so it creates a space, I think, where other people can share just whatever is alive and real, which is the prompt that we use. So that's it. Now we have 3 different Zoom calls around the world. We have the Bali group still going. I was the last of Dai and I left Bali second, and so made sure that I put some people in charge who've been coming for a while, and they're still running it every week, which is beautiful. And another ex-participant from Bali is going to be starting one soon, and I've been talking to them about that as well. So it's really fun just to see how it's expanding.
Yeah, and I've only been involved now for about 4 months, I think, and I've missed a handful of the Monday calls, and I really notice it on a weekly basis if I'm not there, you know? And at the same time, I can't even explain exactly what void it fills in my life. But it's all of everything that you guys just said, which is the emotional part. Like there's like 5 different triggers here that I want to take us down these paths, but in a good way. But like the emotional side, for example, like, you know, we're all big dudes actually. Like I've never met you in person, Nick, but I knew that you were a pretty tall dude. But like I'm 6'3", 220 myself, and I know Dai's a big guy. Like Dai, you know, does his CrossFit.
Dai's a superhero.
6'1", 215.
Dai's a superhero. So yeah, so you got just us, right? You got 3 big dudes, and not that it is about size, but at the same time though, there is this label that like men need to be strong. Men need to not show any kind of weakness. Men can't be emotional. Vulnerability is weakness, right? And we all know that this is not true. But I think one of the pieces that is always so grounding for me is every single week is you see people showing up with a willingness to let all of that go and to just be, right? And I think what you were articulating there, Nick, too, is, you know, when you first shared and you were heard and seen, that's really what it comes down to, is at least from my perspective, is that the people that are coming to these calls on a weekly basis are speaking their truth, whatever it is. Sometimes it's a celebration. Other times it's a breakdown that, you know, you can't help but have massive empathy for what the person is dealing with, because this is real life shit. Like this is life. You know what I mean? But let's talk about vulnerability, because, you know, Dai, you alluded to the idea of like, watch my TEDx talk. And I definitely will link that up for everybody. But, you know, in the 12 years that you've been in this space here, obviously it's kind of culminated to that TEDx talk. And there will be more, obviously, as you continue to ascend into, you know, your message and your gifts. But let's talk about vulnerability. Is vulnerability weakness? And especially from a man perspective, what's your take on this?
I guess it all depends on how we understand the word, right? And I guess that's the interesting thing. You know, I always appreciated that idea that like what's the meaning of life? Like that question, right? Like we get these philosophical questions, and a lot of the times, especially when we think about, what's the meaning of life, the irony is whatever you want to make it. Do you know what I mean? It's like whatever meaning I want to give my own life, that is true to me. And I think, language is such an interesting thing, right? Like we learn through language, through storytelling, through experiences. But man, that word vulnerability, I know for myself early on in my life, I mean, I just always understood it to be a negative word. Vulnerabilities are not a good thing, right? And then so that being reinforced with other types of language and coddling or not, depending on the scenario I found myself, just led me to certain biases, definitely. And I think these biases aren't unique to me, as we've now been able to see, or at least I've now seen in the conversations and the shares that I've seen over the last number of years with other men. Gosh, like all these things that I used to believe, like I shouldn't cry, I can't express my emotions, don't share anything that could be taken out of context or used against me later. Like just all these little things that I'd been building these massive shields, especially in my professional life. I got to be honest. And you're both entrepreneurs, and those that are listening and watching to this that are entrepreneurial or work for yourself or even in high level positions. I mean, it's tough in the workplace. That's why I really respect Brene Brown and a lot of the work that she does, because she's really going after that corporate space, and the leadership teams and just trying to influence big changes and redefine what's vulnerability in a team environment, right? And so, now what's my relation like with that word? Well, it's very different. Okay. I've given the word a very different meaning, but I've also had a beautiful new engaging context to reframe my understanding of that word. But that took me, being willing to put myself out there and find some other men that are willing to do the same thing. And I feel really grateful that I was able to meet Nick, to be quite honest, because Nick is someone that's done a lot of this. As he said, he's been doing this stuff since he was like a teenager, right? Like, so, and I remember Nick recommending books and podcasts and just some of the conversations that we had, and it just shifting my perspective even more. And I thought that was just awesome, And so for me, it's been an ongoing process, Trevor. And I don't have a distinct definition for what I believe vulnerability is, but I believe that we're in the process right now, especially men, redefining what vulnerability is to us as just men. Do you know what I mean? And I'm loving this conversation that's happening globally. Like it's like this is just one little pocket, but we're seeing more of these pockets popping up, and that's what really gets me excited.
Well, and I'll actually use that as an opportunity to ask you, Nick, because it is really about the conversation. And I think with the, especially with the pandemic, everything just got like amplified and accelerated and sped up in really like putting the light on mental health and just how lonely it is for people that may have been very social in the past and haven't had an opportunity to even do that, or just people that have had fears around speaking their truth and not having a place to actually do it. So, from that same context of like vulnerability, but also creating a safe space to actually just have conversations without judgment, without coaching, like from your experience in doing this for now 3 years, like what have you seen for the people that have come into this space? Like what kind of transformation, what kind of viewpoint have people come in with, and then how do they ultimately shift, and how does this manifest for them?
All right, I'm going to answer the vulnerability question a little bit and then shift into that if that works. I see vulnerability as a pathway to something, and Brene Brown talks about this. Vulnerability is the pathway to living a wholehearted life. And so I think of vulnerability as being courageously authentic. So we created the prompt for the shares, what's alive and real for you? And then looking at, are we just giving the squeaky wheel the voice, or is something else that's also alive for you? And leaning into living a wholehearted life. Because otherwise, there's no point. If this was a vulnerability competition, which it could easily turn into, it would be a very different group. And so one of the reasons why we created the format of so people don't know. The format is there's confidentiality, right? So what is shared there stays there. There's no coaching, no advice giving. And at first, that can be really confronting for people. It's like mentorship. You're supposed to tell me what to do. And what we find is that people actually don't need that. What people need is to feel not incompetent. And when I shared that first ever mentorship, and 9 people spent the rest of the time just talking about my stuff, because I'd done enough work, I didn't take it as like, oh wow, I'm really messed up. It was gratitude, and but at the same time, it's hard to be met when sharing vulnerably with immediate solutions.
Right.
And so we created this buffer so that people can just feel heard. And so what we've had is people who are broke, who all of a sudden start thriving financially, people who find the best relationships of their lives, people who have been near suicidal and feeling like way better afterwards. And those are like from the extreme versions. But some people, vulnerability is, like Dai alluded to earlier, sharing celebrations and wins. And so we find people who, much like yourself, say, I don't know why this makes such a difference for me, but if I miss a week, I miss it. Right. And part of that is just the okayness in their own system. And that for me is the main thing. Like I show up for these because the idea that what we're doing ripples out into the world matters for me. When people send me messages or share in the group that they had a conversation with their father or their mother or their partner or their kids to a deeper degree than they've ever had before in their lives, that matters to me, right? So those are some of the things that we hear and we've heard for years now, right? I mean, I don't know what the count is anymore, but because it's a pretty open group, sometimes people come and don't come back for a few months. Sometimes people are there every week. But we've had like 800 people come through, something like that. 6, 7, 8, I don't know. A lot.
Yeah, and it's a really diverse group too. That's the other thing that's, anybody that's listening and watching this too and wondering like, well, is everybody 6'6" and 230 in that thing and working out it? No, it's like we've got, your dad's in it, Nick, there's people that are in there that are single and in their 20s and feeling like they don't have clarity on the direction that their career's going in. There's people that are parents that are having questions about their ability to be a good parent and what it means to be a great dad. Or I know, Dai, that was one of the things you talked about in your TEDx talk even too, was to just, that was one of the moments, right? I think your wife said to you, like, are you being the man that you would want your wife or your daughters to marry or something to that context, right? So there's just so much diversity, not just that, but just people all over the world too, right? We've got people that are tuning in from Thailand and your dad's in India and all shapes and colors and sexual orientations and everything, right? It's just a really open space for anybody to be there. And I think that's one of the great parts about it, because you said there, Nick, it's like the ripple effect that happens from it, right? It's not just even the moments of being on those calls. It's what happens when people walk away from those calls and how they speak to their wife or how they speak to their kids. And podcasting and this type of stuff is healing. This is one of the things that really hit me in the last couple of weeks. And I think I said it out loud on one of the Monday calls, was that hit me recently, that just being able to talk about something without the judgment, without the coaching, without the mentoring, without the feeling that you're wrong or you're broken. There's just something deep down that just actually helps you get to that next phase of your life, that next level.
Men are so often in competition with each other that when that's not present, it's pretty baffling and surprising. And Dai said something to me early on that like really touched me. Like, and I think you know what I'm gonna say, Dai. Like, can I share that? Yeah. And so Dai said, Nick, with you around, I don't have to be the strong one all the time. And there's just this really beautiful sort of Knights of the Round Table metaphor going on where it's called mentorship, but we're not trying to turn people into us, right? The idea is, like you said, all these different kinds of men show up. We've had millionaires, multimillionaires show up, and people who don't have 2 cents to rub together. And there's value in treating everyone like they're of value. And what we say is there's no one right way to man. So what are we trying to figure out from there is what is our way? And everyone goes out, and the theory is act as healthy, strong mentors in their own lives. And that's I think the goal is the more healthy men, or even men that are trying to be healthy. Not to say that we're all fully there. I think the better the world is.
Do you want to maybe riff on the superhuman superhero side of things too, Dai? I know when I was Googling your name and just looking at some of your articles and videos and stuff, I think it was probably like 3-4 years ago, you recorded a video saying something about like you are not superhuman. And we talked about this actually a couple of Mondays ago, I believe, too, just talking about the fact that like, no, we're all human, which means that we're flawed perfectly, but yet we try and put this mask on that we need to be superhuman for our spouses, for our kids, for the world, whatever it might be. You want to maybe riff on that and what that means to you?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate. I had the opportunity to be the MC one year, and then the opening keynote the next year. So for the Superhuman Summit. So for those that haven't looked into it, unfortunately, with COVID, the event didn't happen the last year and a half. But it's basically a TEDx format for a lot of people that are in that sort of fringe space, a lot of cutting edge stuff in the sort of biohack sphere and all that. And it really is about just human potential, right? And I think it's interesting, there's the concept of what is potential. I mean, potential is just that. It's something that could be possible, right? But there usually requires an action or something else. There's a catalyst, right? And I look in human potential, there's usually a choice, right? There comes down to a place where we have to make a decision, and then we got to follow it up with some sort of action. And usually repeat,
And repeat and repeat and repeat.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, look, the Olympics just happened, and you want to look at what are humans capable of, and we're constantly pushing the envelope. I mean, I don't even know how many world records and Olympic records. I lost count. Like, there were so many broken this year, and I was just like, holy cow! How can they get any faster? How can they jump any longer? How can they, like the guy in the 400-meter hurdles? I was just like, what is this? Without the hurdles, he's still running probably 3 times faster than I can. And it just makes you wonder, right? It makes you wonder what's possible. And so that whole idea of human potential and this idea of superhuman, like that's the wonderful thing. I think I've always been, and I know Nick and I nerd out on this sometimes. Nick is a huge like Marvel, DC, just like myself. We both love comics. We love the stories and
as are my kids.
Yes, well,
love it.
Who doesn't like the Marvel universe? Come on,
here comes some characters. Here we go. There you go, Superman.
I love it. Won't bring out my 3,000 comics, but this idea of superhumans, right? This or people that just do extraordinary things that we automatically think, wow, that's just like it's more than human, but it's not. It's human. It's just people have been able to stretch that boundary, and I guess it's just redefining and recognizing that I myself, I like to riff on, what was it? The glass ceiling metaphor, and I've heard you reference this lately as well, Nick. Was it Gay Hendricks?
Gay Hendricks
coined that in the
Big Leap.
Yeah, right. The Big Leap. Yeah, that's right. And for a lot of my life, I've found myself placing my own ceiling, and my own barriers, and it takes work to identify where that barrier is, but then to figure out how the hell am I going to bust through this, and why do I keep getting frustrated with the same thing again and again? It's like what, and some people call it a fear barrier. I mean, there's lots of different terms for it, but at the end of the day, I feel like I'm capped, and I'm like, why am I capped? There's so many people out there that show me this is not the cap, this is not the ceiling, and that's why I love the world. There's proof everywhere. I just look at the Olympics. I'm like, man, I'm like, what do I want to do? And I guess that's the piece, right? I'm not saying people need to be superhuman, but I think we all have superhuman qualities in us, these things that really make us uniquely ourselves. And it's our superpowers, right? Those special things that we're just extremely gifted with, either naturally or through very hard and diligent work and that compound effect, if you will. And so, yeah, that's what gets me excited. To be honest, it's those types of conversations, meeting those types of people, hearing those types of breakthroughs where people, and I mean, you guys can think about this, and Trevor, you know this very, very well, because as soon as you're a parent, you see this in real time with your kids every single day. Like the first day they figure out how to turn themselves over as a baby, right? It's just like, whoa, look at that. That was awesome. Woo. Next thing you know, they're crawling, then they're walking. But it baffles me. It's like they started at just a couple cells, right? Like, and look at it. And so anyways, I get really excited about this stuff. So, yeah, that was a long-winded answer to a very short question.
No, but I think number one, you're exemplifying exactly what Nick was saying, which is like Dai's full of energy, everybody, just so we all know. And everybody loves that about you, and obviously bring that into all of these calls and stuff too. But the balance I think that you guys have created, like you said, is that you don't have to be that all the time, right? You don't have to be superhuman all the time. You can just be honest and real. And I know the last couple of weeks, I know Dai, you shared very honestly and vulnerably even about like the feeling of kind of like just being stuck or what, I can't even remember exactly how you phrased it, but you created a space where even the superhuman leader of the group can say their truth and not be judged and not be held back or not be anything. It's just kind of like we're all human.
It's one of the huge gifts of Dai. I mean, we've talked about this. There is a quality to Dai that is hugely magnetic. I mean, it's the experience that I had when I first met you, Dai, and I've seen it play out over and over again, where a lot of men want to be like you and pedestalize, if that makes sense. And so it's interesting because, I mean, Dai and I have lived together for a stretch in Bali, and he works at it. And one of the gifts is like this projection that Dai is just superhuman. He does it. Like he puts in time and effort to say this is just a human who's made some choices, and there's this huge gift to that, right? And it's like you said, where people come in and they're like, Dai, and as he's like willing to like show behind their curtain that the great and powerful Oz is a man. Right? It's I think it's a huge gift, right? And I think I have some of that too, where people have told me that they want to be like me, and it's like, what are you talking about? Because like I live behind the curtain, I know it's back there, but I think there's a gift to that, right? So as much as I love superheroes, I mean, I showed Lego Batman here, and I've got Superman here.
I didn't see Lego Batman. That's pretty awesome.
He's smaller. I can put him closer.
There we go.
The point though is who we're choosing to be, right? And Dai, like I've said this to him before, he rolls out of bed impressive to most of the world, and he's still challenging himself to his like tender edge, right? Most people don't challenge him. Most people are just like, oh, like, and he's doing it himself. There's so much respect that I have for that. Right? Not resting on laurels. It's like he's showing up, doing the work, and it's magnificent. That's what a leader is, I think.
Well, thank you. You guys, that was really kind of you, Nick. And but keep in mind, and this has turned into a big love fest here. But I gotta say, it's when you have other great men in your life. Well, let's put it this way, because of the group, because of Nick, because of some of the relationships that I've been able to form through just showing up or doing the work, as we've referenced, and some people are probably wondering, what do you mean by doing the work? Well, I mean, like recognizing I got things that are challenging me, triggering me, things that I feel are holding me back, things that I want to change my life. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. So what are you going to do to change that? That's what I'm referring to as the work, right? Like, what are you going to do to live into that version of you that you want to be? To experience life as that person, because you can tap into it right now, but there's still aspects to keep yourself there, or to keep growing, or to keep expanding, right? And without those connections and those other men showing up, and Nick says this really beautifully, this idea that we create these experiences every Monday, but it's a unique experience. And depending on who shows up, that's what forms the experience. But any one person not show up, it would have been a different experience. I gain a lot of motivation and inspiration from the men that I've been able to connect to. There's this sort of, sometimes it's a spoken, but sometimes it's an unspoken accountability as well. Just knowing that I'm going to see those guys next Monday. We're in touch through WhatsApp throughout the week. I know that they're out there doing great things. I know they're working through their stuff. Well, I'm going to work through my stuff too. And it's that piece of just knowing there's a community of other guys out there that, as different as we are, we're so much more alike. But until we were vulnerable with one another and creating that space for us to just openly share and just be like real, it's funny. We just go through life thinking that no one gets me. No one will understand this stuff I'm working through, And I think it's that piece for me. That was the biggest breakthrough, was realizing that, gosh, all these things that I've been holding in, thinking that no one's going to get me. As soon as you start sharing, it's like, oh yeah, me too. And this is, to sort of allude to a comment you made earlier, Trevor. You were talking about just the diversity of our group. I remember, you probably remember this, the one time in Bali, Nick. We had 24 guys around this table, and the youngest guy was 19. The oldest guy was almost 80, and we had everything in between. We had people from all over the different world. I think we had 7 countries represented there. Like, it was just wild, right? But it was neat because, that 19-year-old ended up sharing something, and it's something that he never shared with anybody before. And then to see that old guy, and I'm not going to say his name, but he's a good friend of Nick and I, and he probably doesn't appreciate me calling him old guy when he listens to this. Not that cool. Okay. Sorry, you're listening to this. The wise person that is a good friend of Nick and I, I just remember him answering, just saying, or sorry, it was the hand gesture, right? Like, it was the hand on the table, which we have to sort of refer that I get you, I've been there. It's this sort of, we won't go into all the hand gestures right now. We'll save that for people that want to show up. But, Nick was really smart when he, well, you've seen the hand gesture aspect, and that's what allows the flow to keep the space. And, when Nick suggested we integrate that, it was awesome. It made such a big difference. But to see this man put his hand on the table, and it's like, we're generations apart here, right? And yet they're both relating, they're both understanding, they're both connecting. And I know the 19-year-old and him connected afterwards and had a conversation after the meeting. And that's the beautiful thing. There's often the conversations that happen as a result of the Monday shares, right? And guys follow up with each other. They have side conversations. They relate. They connect. They support. They help. So it's, man, I don't know. I don't want to do life alone, okay? I don't want to do it alone. But I want good people, really good people around me. And, but I also want to add value to other people's lives. So I look at this as being a wonderful community for us all to be able to do that, especially as men, because you know what? Women have figured this out a long time ago. They figured this out. I really, when I look at my wife, she just has the ability to see a friend. They get there, they get to that place where they're able to connect and open up and support. And I'm like, why can't I do that more? But I've never been taught. I never witnessed it. It was never role model to me. Unlike Nick, Nick had that beautiful experience as a teen. And wow, imagine if teenagers had experiences like that, Nick, on the regular. Like, what if we were taught that? What would the world look like then? Anyways, so, yeah.
And I saw the extreme difference, right? What could possibly be the outcome of not having that, right? Like, my ex-stepdad, like, his dad was like ex-military and did preventative beatings just in case he did anything wrong. And that was, that led to him being abusive with me. And then I saw my dad, who's been through stuff, showing up with other men, trying to be real, right? Just doing the best they could, reading some of the books. And what a difference it made. The thing I want to underline is that idea of how similar we are. Right? We've had people different religions, different nationalities, different sexual orientations. And because we don't cover that, right, there's just a humanness that shows up, right? We're not trying to group anyone inside of those categories. I remember a few weeks ago, probably a few months ago now, before we officially started one of the Zoom calls, some of the guys who are Canadian started talking about hockey, and it got a little chippy. And it was so interesting to look at what happens when that's the way that people are relating versus finding the similarities, right? Oh, you support this team and not that team? Oh, we're now at odds. Versus you're a man and I'm a man. You're a human, I'm a human. Okay, let me see what you're about. Let me see your heart. And what we've been finding for, like I said, almost 3 years, is that these guys, different generations, different socioeconomic standing, whatever, have shown up and found brotherhood through a very like simple but elegant, strong structure and format.
Well, I think you're speaking to what I was saying before about just creating the space for people to just come and share their truth in the moment, right? Knowing that, like, I know my truth has changed over the years as I've become more aware of certain things, or I've broken through stuff, or people have allowed me to see something through a different lens. And the hockey example is a great one, actually, because that's just like a very polarizing example of people can understand. Like, if you're a Maple Leafs fan versus a Canadiens fan, like, yeah, it's like a century of like conflict, right? But like, look at the reality of what the world is throwing at us right now with politics, with like, are you pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, or like, I'm saying this from my own perspective, is like there's a tension that I feel even in my body sometimes of when I'm talking to people and they start taking a position on one side. Do I adapt to that and agree and become, kind of like aligned with them, or do I stand in my truth and create conflict? And does that bother me? Like, is conflict a bad thing? Like, that's the other thing that I've been reframing myself lately too, is like, healthy conflict is not a bad thing. Having a disagreement about something is not a bad thing as long as it's done respectfully in a safe space. And this is one of the things that I've got out of being a part of these. And
Just real quick, are you
Yeah.
familiar with the term chunking? It's like an NLP idea of like zooming in or out.
No.
So basically, you can take things in chunks, right? So you can be really in something and see the micro version of it, or chunk out and see the more macro version. What Dai and I have been doing for years is helping people chunk out a little bit, out of their neighborhood, out of their city, out of their nationality, and see the humanity. Right. So what you just described, all of these conflicts, I believe that if people chunked out a little bit, zoomed out a little bit, it's kind of like that that phenomena that astronauts talk about when they see the planet from space and like, oh, we're all there. We're all in the same rock floating in space. Like we're more alike than we think.
It's very true. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap us with all of that, but I want to wrap us with this, and then I also want to ask you guys to share with everybody where they can connect with you and find out more about this. But in January of this year, I was actually at a quarterly retreat for our company, and we had one of those little printing machines, where you just type in your thing and it like prints out a little little strip. And I actually printed one out, and it's on my computer right now. I'm looking at it. It says, "Be accountable to your greatest self," which was just my reminder to say, this, I'm not doing any of this stuff for anybody else. I'm doing it for me. And when nobody's watching, I'm still watching. Like, some higher power is watching, right? And when this group that you guys created came into my life, it was about 3 months into that where I was thinking to myself, I can't do this alone. I need accountability. I need a place where I can go and say out loud that like this is hard for me right now because I can't see the destination yet. And I'm feeling muddy in this space, And if I could just summarize what the group has meant to me, that would be it. It's just literally a place where, and you articulated this on the last call, Nick, that when I'm committed to growth, that means that it never ends. I'm going to here, and then when I hit that ceiling, I'm busting through, and then I'm at the bottom of the next level. And I need some support to be like, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Keep going. Like, just wait till you get up here. I know you can't see it yet, but just keep going. So I just wanted to share that for anybody that's watching this, that wants to like just explore what the heck we're even talking about here. And can you guys share how people can connect with both of you personally, and then how they can find out more about joining one of these calls?
Well, first of all, Trevor, just wanted to say thank you. Feeling a lot of gratitude for you, as well as just the fact that you're not afraid to talk about the journey you're on, and share it, but especially being very vocal and putting this podcast out to the world with these types of conversations. I just think it's great. And just feel really honored to be here, especially alongside my good friend, Nick. And so anyways, I just feeling a lot of gratitude. So thank you for the opportunity. And those that are listening or watching, listen, I just like meeting people. I like having good conversations, no hidden agenda, none of that crap. Just like really just connecting with cool people that want to do cool stuff for other cool people, And so the easiest way for us to have a conversation is just shoot me a little note saying, hey, heard you on Trevor's podcast. I thought you and Nick did a great job. Thank you. Like whatever. Just send me something on, and I'm most active on Instagram, Facebook, as well as LinkedIn. If you can type in my name, like if you can actually spell it right, Dai, Dai, it's a Welsh name for David, and Manuel, yes, it's spelled with an E. It's a Portuguese last name. I know people are like, what are you? Don't worry, I'm Canadian. I'm Canadian. It's all good. It's all good.
Diverse.
I'm a mix of everything. Yeah. But yeah, that's the easiest way to reach out. And if you want just content on how to live your best life, from nutrition, mindset, physical well-being, gosh, a whole pile of stuff. I've been blogging and writing articles on this subject matter since 2008. So just go to DaiManuel.com. There's now 2,200 articles on there, I think now. So good luck. It is a bit of a rabbit hole. Lots of good information, useful if you want it. Anyways, it's there. But I'm also very active on there if you want to shoot me a message. So that's it.
That's a gold mine, really. Yeah. So, hello, Nick Wood. So you can find me on Instagram, nickwood.world. For the group, like MENtorship.world, people can come in and say, like, shoot an email at welcome@MENtorship.world, and we'll respond and let you know how to join in. Yeah.
Perfect. And of course, anybody watching, listening, reach out to me too, because I obviously know how to get into this mentorship world here as well. And yeah, Dai, I think one of the things that always stood out to me that I don't think I've ever heard anybody else say too is whenever you introduce yourself and on your LinkedIn profile and everywhere else is you talk about actively dating your wife for 22 years or whatever it is. And that's always stuck with me. It really has, because I think it kind of speaks to everything that we've just kind of been summarizing here, which is like, to be the greatest versions of ourselves, the work never ends, man. Like, you don't just become the best husband in the world or the best father in the world or the best business person in the world or whatever it is by attaining something. It's a journey. It's a journey. And you got to surround yourself with good people. So I'm grateful for both of you as well. Thank you so much for doing this. We'll do a follow-up on this too, because my intention is to always do a follow-up interview in like 6 months and talk about what's changed, what's going on, So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Trevor Turnbull Show. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider subscribing on my YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast platform and leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. Now, until next time, remember, today is a beautiful day of opportunity. Trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. So be grateful, be curious, and be brave.